Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And with this one, the conclusion of my Greens to Gladiator challenge has been completed on my Frost Mage, going all the way from Greens to Gladiator, and I wanted to cover my thoughts and experience with the class, what I think about it in terms of its viability, what are some of the strategies that you should be employing with it if you decide to undertake the mantle of a Frost Mage. We've got 9.2.5 coming out literally today. Frost Mage is receiving some nerfs, however, I don't expect that to be a major shift for it. If anything, it's going to be the Warlock specs that you're playing with that are going to make more of a shift, but with my experiences on the Frost Mage, having queued with LFG, having queued with my stream, having queued with some of my friends, is that you are somewhat limited in your compositions. The most success that I had was playing with a Destruction Warlock. I had some fun playing with an Elemental Shaman, but it was a bit more of a struggle. And if you're going to be running Rogue Mage, it would likely be preferred that you were playing Fire. So if you were going to pick up Frost Mage right now, stick to Double Caster. I think Destruction Warlock is number one, possibly Demonology Warlock here in 9.2.5, and then Balance Druid actually could be a decent pickup as well. I've played that comp a bit on my Druid. I didn't get to try it because there's not really a lot of Balance Druids with my Frost Mage, but I had a really good time with it, although I would want to give you the warning that it is limited in its comps, although the comp that it's limited to is pretty popular, but it might not be moving into the future. So a little bit of shaky ground for the Frost Mage. The biggest thing with Frost Mage is to prepare your Frostbolt key binding. If you've played any classic WoW, you've probably got a lot of practice pressing your Frostbolt button. You're going to be pressing your Frostbolt button a lot more than anything else, really. It's going to be very important for generating your flurry procs, for generating your instant damage through your Ice Lance, and stacking up your Icy Veins legendary. It's very important on the Frost Mage to get aggressive during your Deathborn and your Icy Veins, and to prevent enemies from retreating. However, during the start of a match, when you haven't activated your cooldowns, especially against Rogue Mage Priest, you want to be utilizing Polymorph and removing enemy attackers. We can see in this instance, they're going after my Paladin, so I've used Polymorph onto the Mage, and my Warlock has used Seduce onto the Holy Priest, preventing the Dispel. We can then chain the Seduced into a Polymorph to set ourselves up for some damage. I'm generating icicles onto the Mage here. The biggest deal is you see the Rogue at half health, but as this comp, you just want to be always doing damage. For me to reposition to the Rogue would mean I'd have to leave the Priest and stop sheeping, and also lose damage while moving towards the Rogue. So I just tossed my damage at the Mage and got them down to about 75%. Here I'm trying to use Spell Steal to get Combustion off of the Fire Mage. You can use Spell Steal to steal things like Combustion and Power Infusion. Those are kind of like main hot button spells that you want to try and remove. And while my Paladin is blinded, I'm going to switch the sheeps over to the Rogue. I think when facing a comp like Rogue Mage, it's better to be safe than sorry and just spam your sheeps when you see Shadow Dance or Combustion up to stop as much damage as possible. Now we're going to use Ice Wall to try and prevent their retreat, activate our Deathborn, activate our Icy Veins, and get as aggressive as possible. It's during this time that if you're playing with a Paladin, you should request Aura Mastery, because getting kicked on Frost or crowd controlled whatsoever during this time is very detrimental. This is your highlight moment. You need to be snaring enemy attackers with Frozen Orb and Blizzard to prevent them from retreating, so that you can channel Frostbolts, because if you're not able to get Frostbolts, you're not going to get stacks of your Slick Ice, and you're not going to do the most amount of impact that you could with these cooldowns, which would be ultimately ending the game. So in this position, we're just still pinning the Priest with Blizzard, trying to cast Frostbolt on them as much as possible without them line of sighting. And we can get Greater Fade at very low health and continue casting while our Paladin charges in to possibly stun the target, to which then we can drop our flurries to try and burst and kill the Holy Priest in the stun lock. We managed to proc their Guardian Spirit, which means it's going to be a 3-minute cooldown, and it's going to be a really good idea to just stay on top of them while you can during these powerful cooldowns. Don't be afraid to blink on your enemies during this moment. When you have Dark Soul and when you have Deathborn, they're much more afraid of you than you should be of them. But when those cooldowns are about to run out, you know that they're going to switch gears and start going on the attack. So in this position, our Warlock is smoke bombed. We can't really assist too much, so they've traded their Unending Resolve, but we will try our best to polymorph who we can, which in this instance is the Fire Mage outside of the smoke bomb, while the Rogue is just attacking into Unending Resolve. And as soon as we've survived the stun lock, time to go back to mashing the Frostbolt button. I do like using Blizzard as well. I've got the conduit for the increased snare on Blizzard. I felt like having control of the enemy attackers was a higher priority than the bit of extra damage you'd get from other conduits, because it's your Destruction Warlock that's really winning the game outside of your Deathborn with double Chaos Bolt. So if your Blizzard is snaring extra hard and gets them an extra second to cast a Chaos Bolt, I was deriving more value from that, specifically from my conduits. But here, we're just spamming out as much damage as possible. We've used Seduce onto the Holy Priest to get crowd control, and we've got Cloak of Shadows from the Rogue, which is the most important cooldown for the Rogue to survive. Now the Priest is caught into a fear out into the open, so we're going to reposition, use Ice Flows, which lets us move cast our Sheep, but the Priest is going to Shadow Word Death. So against Priest specifically, you do want to try and stop cast, but if they do Death, just cast Sheep right away, because most of the time they're not going to have a way to remove it, and even a half Sheep can be enough to sometimes win a game. But in this position, if I had gotten that full Sheep, definitely would have been a trinket from the Priest, so important to try and fake out death when you can, and you can see it with an animation, or you can download some add-ons. Regardless, without even needing the Sheep, it's rotating through our Flurry combos and dropping 2 Ice Lances after we instant Flurry to make sure we're min-maxing our burst damage. We were able to get cheat death from the Rogue, so they're not going to have that to survive to a double Chaos Bolt later on. We got Cloak of Shadows earlier on, so we've been whittling down their cooldowns, but rather than training the Rogue and following them at the pillar and trying to chase them, we're just going to switch targets if they decide to run away and attack the Fire Mage, because our main goal is to clump up our enemies. If they stay out in the open, they are going to regret it. We get Ice Block in this instance, but if they clump up on the pillar together, they are also going to regret it. But if we're chasing somebody on the pillar while somebody else is in the open on top of our team, that's a big mistake as a Frost Mage. You just want to be turreting whatever you can out in the open. Here we've got the Mage caught in a Mortal Coil, but the Rogue has Shadow Dance. So I fake out Shadow Word Death while casting Sheep, and then cast Sheep onto the Priest. And I kind of try and turn this around a little bit aggressively by going after the Mage, to which we just got Ice Block. The Rogue is feared. The Priest is polymorphed. Really good idea to try and min-max those crowd control diminishing returns when you can. But there is a lot of like proc AoE damage that can break CC. So don't be 100% reliant on it if the enemies are stacked. Here we've got the Priest isolated with a polymorph, which is great to set up on enemy healers. So we're going to ice wall the pillar so that they cannot retreat to out of line of sight, and just keep mashing out our frost bolts. Try to lock mind control here because I don't want to get CC'd with my Paladin and my Warlock being really far away. But whenever you can catch a healer and a Sheep, always good to swap to them if their teammates have left them behind out in the open. In this specific case, we didn't really have a lot of damage. My Warlock's on defense, so we weren't really able to capitalize on that situation too effectively. But now we're just waiting to see where is their attack going to go. We're in a Sheep, our Paladin's in a Sap. This is the most dangerous situation you could be in the game, which is all 3 players are crowd controlled. Our Warlock's going to use Dark Pact here to absorb some of the damage. However, if there are more cooldowns, this may not be enough, so you've got to be ready for something maybe like a Trinket Sacrifice here in this instance, because full poly on me into full mind control plus full blind Sap, that is too long of a CC chain really to try and sit through. Regardless of the cooldown situation, you can use Ice Block during times like this because your Paladin and your Warlock are generally more vulnerable. You can kind of throw your Ice Blocks to either go aggressive during your Deathborns or throw Ice Blocks to save your partners in instances like that, and I definitely would recommend it. I was playing with Echoing Resolve because this was prior to 9.2.5, but past this point, I don't think you're going to want to wear Echoing Resolve anymore. You're going to want to be going and getting a medallion for yourself on the Frost Mage. And then right here, I'm just chasing the Priest because they're the only one really out in the open, trying to do as much damage as possible, create opportunities for the team to swap targets, but they're setting up their crowd control. And honestly, at this point, they've gotten a lot better at setting up their crowd control by utilizing instant CC on multiple players. Here, I'm chastised into mind control. My Paladin is DB'd into ring, but my Warlock got a nice pre-mortal coil on the kidney shot, which prevented the Mage and Rogue from attacking for a few moments, which gives us time to port, but we're really far away. So right at this instance, I think that I should have used Ice Block on this just to be able to help my teammates out. I go for cast on Poly on Priest. I don't fake death here because I'm anticipating that they're not going to death because they deathed the last one and got faked. So it's kind of a bit of a mind game you're going to have with Priest whenever you are trying to land Sheeps like that. But with the Priest out in the open with Sheep, I'm going to try and drop Frozen Orb and Blizzard to stop them from retreating from my Warlock. And that's kind of my main goal as the Frost Mage outside of my Deathborn, is to keep the enemy attackers in line of my lock while snared and being as annoying as possible. Now they're off the pillar right now trying to stack stack up on the priest, so this is a really good time to go for Deathborn and Icy Veins. Again, calling for Aura Mastery during this time should be a high priority. Any sort of CC immunities that your team has, this is the best time to do it. So even a Blessing of Protection if necessary, because you're going to be able to do a lot of damage. And you can see they don't run away immediately. And we decide to ice block because my team is getting set up with crowd control, as well as I have Deathborn up. Should have likely CS'd this polymorph here, just because it's during my Deathborn and I really need to min-max my damage. We're going to shape the Mage and swap back to the Rogue because they're in the best position. You can see them out in the corner, out in the open. We get a Fear on the Priest, which I can then chain into a polymorph, and we can just flurry Ice Lance. We've stacked up our Slick Ice, we've boosted our Frost damage, and we are able to execute the kill. And this is why it's very important to play aggressive as the Frost Mage during the Deathborn Icy Veins, save some immunities during that window, because that's really the time that you are going to be able to win your matches. And this is something that I had to learn on my own journey through it. Also, when you're going to be aggressive, like a little tip is going to be activating Alter Time. So you can blink on your enemies with Deathborn and Icy Veins, preemptively activate Alter Time, use 3 charges of Ice Flows because these will give you Purge Protection, and then you can safely press Frostbolt there because if you get bursted, you're going to alter back to full HP. And that was kind of an aggressive maneuver that I started to utilize more and more as I've gone onto my Frost Mage. But other than that, I hope that you enjoyed the video. This is going to be it for me here. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with news and changes, everything related to World of Warcraft, or if it potentially piques your interest in the future, then make sure you hit the subscribe button because it is a great resource for that. I am aiming to be the best resource for that. So thank you very much for your support, and I will see you in the next video.